Can a Satanist celebrate Christmas? The short answer is yes, of course they can. If they want to, who cares? The longer answer, however, may reveal some things worth Satansplaining. Also, responding to listener mail about satanic book recommendations and a look at Mormons and Sikhs.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain, Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
Magister Bill M here with Satansplain. Recently, I was working on a new Satansplain episode on logic and fallacies. My plan is to give a crash course in that topic while also tying things directly to Satanism. So that was the topic I had originally planned, and I'll certainly be doing it eventually, but I realized that Christmas is coming up, so I thought I would first do an episode addressing that and some other topics. It seems that around this time of the year, I'll be on an online Satanism forum, and some Satanist will bring up the topic of Christmas. Questions like, how do different Satanists view Christmas? Should Satanists reject Christmas? Is it okay for Satanists to celebrate Christmas? And so on. So again, I figured those sorts of things were worth bringing up here on Satansplain. The reason why I think this is a topic worth bringing up, well, it seems obvious to me. Christmas is a holiday that is widely celebrated throughout a significant part of the world. It gets celebrated in many different ways, not just one day, but, something that takes up an entire season. There's a huge industry based around it. I mean, there are stores that carry Christmas decorations as early as August. And, of course, for a lot of the people who consider themselves Christian and don't even go to the church, they do try to make it to church around Christmas and maybe Easter too. So even if you are a Satanist who considers yourself to also be a shameless misanthrope, the sort of person who avoids people at all costs, is proud to be a hermit, not to mention somebody who proudly rejects any and all things remotely Christian related, well, that's fine, but the fact of the matter is you're still a human living on this planet, and you presumably have a means of income, and if you listen to this show, you presumably are in an English-speaking country, and all of this means that Christmas affects your world on some level or another, even if that's something as simple as wanting to go to a business that's closed on Christmas Day, or running your own business and being affected perhaps for the better with people who are spending money in December for Christmas-related reasons. So if there are any of you out there who would try to make the argument that a Satanism show shouldn't be bringing up the topic of Christmas at all, well, those are my reasons for disagreeing with that notion. Also, if you are a person who went straight to the comments, straight to the comment section without bothering to listen to this episode first, and you just read the show's description and wanted to show how smart you are by telling everybody, of course, Satanists can celebrate Christmas. You can do anything you want to in Satanism. Well, congratulations, you just made yourself, look a little silly to the people who listened first, because your reply is not only predictable but oversimplified, and I'll be explaining why in a moment. Though I may just reply to your comment with a timestamp of, where this position is right now where I'm talking, just to show that I called you out. Anyway, enough schadenfreude for me. Now, getting back to these sorts of questions about Satanism and Christmas that come up, well, let's look at the more general question of, are Satanists allowed to do blank? Some Satanists I know would be quick to answer that, again with, well, of course you can do it, whatever blank is, it can be anything. And to that I would say, no, not quite. It's true for the most part. However, there are certainly some things you can't do in Satanism. And by that, I mean there are beliefs and actions that can't be called anything but unsatanic. Because as I've explained before, Satanism is not an anything-goes religion. You are your own god, but Satanism is not a religion where you can do anything you want at any time and still call it Satanism. It's true that there is lots and lots of room for personal expression, the pursuit of personal indulgences and personal passions. In fact, all of that is even encouraged in Satanism. But at the end of the day, there are some things which define Satanism, you see. There are things which distinguish Satanism from not Satanism. If there weren't, then the term Satanism would be meaningless. There would be no point in calling yourself a Satanist then, since that word wouldn't tell us anything about yourself. Unfortunately, we seem to live in a world these days with people who are so solipsistic and insecure with themselves that they view any sort of structure or consistency as being the same as conformity or a threat to personal liberty. And personally, I think this is just silly. My friend, Reverend Jared of the Church of Satan, has a simple question he asks when this debate comes up. So he'll run into somebody who whines, well, you can't tell me what Satanism is about. You can't tell me what to do as a Satanist. You're being a gatekeeper. I can do anything I want as a Satanist. I am my own God. And anyway, Reverend Jared's question is simply, okay, can you worship Jesus and still be a Satanist? And of course, he never gets an answer, because the answer is obviously no. If you're worshiping Jesus or worshiping any other supernatural deity for that matter, then you are directly going against the fundamentals of Satanism. You're going against a religion that explicitly says that man has always created his own gods rather than vice versa. A religion that says you are your own god. A religion which explicitly condemns notions attributed to Jesus, like turning the other cheek, love your enemies, feeling shame about lust, and things like that. Now, this is not demanding conformity, just consistency with words, really. The label of our religion, a religion which we, the Church of Satan, established as an actual codified religion in the first place. There are other examples, too. It's not hard to think of them if you're a Satanist and you understand Satanism. No, you can't molest children, for example, and call yourself a Satanist who is just exhibiting sexual freedom. No. See the Satanic Bible's chapter on sex. See Satanic Rules of the Earth, number 5 and number 9. And anyway, the same sort of thing actually goes with other ideologies, in other religions, too. You can't say, I'm going to be polytheistic and drink a lot of beer and have gay sex and call it Islam. Or, I'm supporting England's monarchy because I'm an anarchist. Again, practical consistency and definitions, people. At this point, some of you may be wondering what any of this has to do with Christmas. Well, here is my point. Aside from all of that blatantly obvious stuff that goes against Satanism, I would say the answer to the question, are Satanists allowed to do blank, whatever blank is invariably, yeah, go ahead and do it if you want to, and you're responsible about it. Who cares? Can a Satanist be a political activist? Yes, fine, whatever. We have plenty of Satanists in the Church of Satan who are activists for some political cause or another. If there is a particular cause whose goal would make your world a better place and more indulgent for you, and you think it's a cause worth fighting because the outcome would be worth the work, then sure, knock yourself out. And if you don't want to, then don't. You're not obligated to. Can I be a Satanist and help a homeless shelter? Fine, if you really want to. Nobody's stopping you. If you feel it's worth your time and you get something out of it, then sure. Who knows, maybe it's ultimately in your own shamelessly selfish interest to do that because, I don't know, let's say having too many homeless roaming around your neighborhood leads to problems that affect you. Maybe you used to be homeless yourself and the whole thing hits you on a personal level. I don't know. Do it if you want to. Satanists who don't want to do that, don't. Can I be a Satanist and use tarot cards? Yes, fine. Who gives a shit? Granted, if you prescribe actual supernatural properties to a deck of cards and tie that into notions like past life regression or crap like that, then most Satanists are understandably going to take a look at you and say, yeah, I think you may be a mystic loon and not a Satanist. But otherwise, if you're a Satanist who just likes tarot cards, maybe you just like their aesthetic, you like their mystique, you find them fun at parties, maybe you're even making money from it, fine, do it. I have a couple of decks of tarot cards myself. I even used to read tarot professionally in downtown Salem, Massachusetts. No issues here. And if you're a Satanist who finds tarot cards to be stupid and doesn't want to have anything to do with them, then that's okay too. Don't. So yeah, we get to the question, can I be a Satanist and celebrate Christmas? Well, do I even have to explain this one at this point? Well, I'll answer anyway since I got this far. Yes, fine, you can be a Satanist and celebrate Christmas. Now, if you're celebrating Christmas as the actual birth of Jesus Christ, whom you believe to be the actual Son of God, then I'd have to ask, what the fuck are you doing identifying with Satanism in the first place? But otherwise, I don't see the problem. I celebrate it myself. Many Satanists do. Many atheists in general do. I'm an American. Christmas is a big part of American culture, Western culture in general. My family and other relatives have traditions we've been doing. I like getting presents. I like giving presents to other people close to me. I like eggnog. I like huge meals. I put up the decorations, take them down in January. I'm not one of those people who leaves tacky stuff up year round. I like putting on the music from, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole. And in short, I always say I celebrate Christmas as the indulgent, materialistic holiday that it truly is. And this is why these days I don't really get all hung up over hearing people say the phrase Merry Christmas as opposed to Happy Holidays or Season's Greetings. These phrases, along with, for that matter, Happy Hanukkah or Superlative Solstice or whatever, to me, pretty much all the same thing. They're just ways to tell somebody, hi, we're doing some fun shit in December and hope you are too. Now, I personally used to get upset about this. I used to adamantly oppose the phrase Merry Christmas, maybe because I liked the embarrassment I could instill by turning to somebody and revealing that they were incorrect in the assumption that I was a Christian and that I celebrated a Christian holiday. And Satanists who do feel that way are welcome to. You can give that response or say, bah humbug, I don't know. But the way I see it nowadays, I would argue that by removing the word Christmas from winter holiday celebrations, you're not actually making things more secular. You're making the term Christmas to be more religious than it is or than it really should be. I always hear Christian conservatives whine, or even people who aren't Christian conservatives whine, oh, Christmas is so commercialized nowadays. To which I say, when was it not commercialized exactly? Was it ever during your lifetime? I grew up in the 1980s, and believe me, there was no shortage of commercialism around Christmas then. Was it the 1950s, the 1940s when it wasn't commercialized? No. In fact, you can go on the internet and look up Christmas photos from like 100 years ago and see stores advertising Christmas sales in their windows. You can find the Sears Roebuck catalogs with, much materialism and commercialism around Christmas. Christmas trees, Christmas wreaths, Santa Claus posters. Basically, not a whole lot of Jesus references aside from the word Christmas itself. Maybe a nativity scene, not a hell of a lot else. Also, here is something a lot of Christians and non-Christians alike seem to overlook. Not all Christians themselves even celebrate Christmas. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, they do not celebrate Christmas or any other holidays. Now, the reason why is kind of interesting. The reason why is because they know that Christmas has its roots in winter pagan religions, and that the actual birth date of Jesus is not December 25th. There's no biblical basis for it. That was a date chosen by a pope once upon a time. So it kind of begs the question to the other Christians. It's like, okay, the Jehovah's Witnesses are kind of putting their money where their mouth is. Why aren't the rest of you Christians? In fact, even early Christians didn't really celebrate Christmas. To the early Christians, they didn't really care so much about the birth of Jesus. To them, the important thing was the story of his death and resurrection. So they celebrated Easter, but not really Christmas. And even later on throughout the centuries, other Christians were split on this. Some Protestants rejected Christmas. The Puritans rejected Christmas, as I understand it. And I read that the American colonists initially tried to distance themselves from Christmas as there was too much association with it as being a British holiday tied in with the crown and the Church of England and whatnot. In fact, it seems a lot of the traditions Christians take for granted today, gathering with a family and all that, were mostly popularized with author Charles Dickens. I'm not saying it didn't happen before that, but, I don't fault the Christians for wanting to celebrate Christmas in their own way, just to make that clear. I respect their right to do that. Again, I think it's fine if Satanists and other non-Christians take on the secular view of Christmas and celebrate its secularized elements. But this idea from some Christians that Christmas was consistently, that it's been consistently this long-standing tradition by all Christians over the centuries, and that there was never anything secular or cultural about it, that it was all about Jesus and only Jesus, and was destroyed by heathens and materialistic greed only in the last generation or two. Sorry, but I would say that thinking is a myth. I also see Christians complaining when somebody writes Christmas with an X. They think that this is trying to take Jesus out of Christmas. And these people apparently don't know their own history. Do you know who came up with the X abbreviation? It was actually Christians. You can look this up. Don't take my word for it. The X is actually a Greek letter chi, and that's the first letter of Christos, which is the Greek word for Christ. Even a lot of churches, like Catholic churches and Orthodox churches, you might see what looks like an X and a P on the doors or on like the front of the church, or an X drawn over a P. It does not stand for no parking. It's the Greek letters chi and rho from the same Greek word, Christos. And that's because the New Testament was originally in Greek, not English. So if anything, writing Christmas with the X, I would say, is closer to the Christian name of Jesus than writing out Christmas with a C. Remember this argument. Be sure to point that out the next time you see a Christian whining about the X spelling. Before we take a break, I'm going to make a couple more points here to tie this back in with Satanism. First of all, if you are a Satanist who hates Christmas with a passion, and in fact you'd like to just bash Christmas altogether, maybe buy a model manger and burn it in effigy, whatever, fine, go for it, knock yourself out. I would only argue that maybe it's kind of redundant, and this is what I mean by that. As the Satanic Bible says, the Black Mass, to use an example here, isn't the main ritual of the Satanist, and Satanists would only use a Black Mass for psychodrama, because as LaVey explains, the Black Mass is a parody of the Catholic Mass, but the Catholic Mass itself is a parody of pagan rites. The rituals from the bread to the chalice to bells and candles and the like all have their roots in pagan tradition. So to do a parody of a parody is kind of redundant. And the reason I mention this is because I would personally extend that to trying to be blasphemous about Christmas. Christmas is a blasphemy itself of old pagan rites, essentially, so trying to blaspheme the blasphemy may be redundant. That's just my personal take. I mean, why not just celebrate solstice or Krampus? Krampus is pretty cool. Something like that. I mean, I suppose I shouldn't talk, though, because on my other podcast, The Devil's Mischief, I'm going to be playing some Christmas-themed comedy and novelty tracks partially to poke fun at the season, poke fun at the wholesomeness. So, oh well, moving on. In closing, as Satanists, I would say that we officially celebrate, what we officially celebrate is the solstice. The Satanic Bible makes some mention of the solstices and the equinoxes, and I would argue that there is a good reason why We have it as the solstice. So again, if you're a Satanist who wants to celebrate quote-unquote Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever in that secular sense, in the aesthetic sense and so on, you know, you like the aesthetics, you like the decorations, you have some sort of family tradition going on with your relatives, you just like getting presents, whatever, perfectly understandable, go for it. But I would say it begs the question of what the real reason is for all of these December holidays. Christians, of course, claim it's all about Jesus and everybody is copying Jesus, but history kind of says otherwise. I personally would argue that these are ultimately all different flavors of people getting together in the dead of winter, you know, the darkest day of the year, to celebrate life and to feast and to so on, so on. And I would more specifically argue that the underlying reason for all of this is the solstice, the physical conditions of the tilt of the earth and the change in the seasons in the northern hemisphere where these traditions sprung out of. So as Satanists, I would say that we are realists and we are not crediting the reason for the season to Jesus or a miracle with 8 candles or what have you. No, it's nature, the solstice. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, I'll be reading some listener mail. Stay tuned. You are listening to Satansplain.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
And baby G was born of Joseph and Mary. And the people who made calendars came and said, "Oh, thank you, Mary. Good timing." 6 days early, actually, so, but it's Christmas, so who cares? And baby G was there, and 3 wise men came from the Old Testament with huge fuck-off beards. And they said, "Baby G, we have followed a star for a long while." It was actually a lamppost for a while. We got pissed one night and we were going round this thing, but now we're here, and we bring you gold. We bring you frankincense. And we bring you myrrh. We don't know what it is, actually. You rub it on the back of a duck, it goes a lot faster. This is what someone said on the way here. It's a small banjo. Or if you can spell it, you can have it. How about that, eh? Woo-hoo. And the baby G was very happy. "Thank you very much. Thank you for my Christmas presents. And now for my birthday presents." Oh, yes. Christmas and birthday. He's the first one. It's 2... 3 wise men, 3 very stupid men, I feel. 3 not that intelligent men. Mary, Joseph, any shops open at the moment? Late-night petrol stations. Thank you. Late-night petrol stations, great. We'll be back in 20 minutes, all right? 20 minutes later, they come back. Baby G, we bring you 20 cigarettes, a can of Diet Coke, and a sack of charcoal.
If you like religion-bashing laughter and other comedy that's not made for the masses, then check out The Devil's Mischief. Visit devilsmischief.com for more details. The Devil's Mischief, carnal comedy clips and Netherworld novelty numbers available on Radio Free Satan.
You are listening to Satansplain. You can listen to Satansplain episodes in a variety of ways. You can listen on Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and more. You can also directly listen on the website, the official website, Satansplain.com. I keep everything there because you can never trust one platform to keep a show available. That's my attitude. You never know if they're going to flag it for something stupid, especially YouTube. But also you can email me. bill@satansplain.com is the email address. Let us read some recent listener mail. Speaking of email, I've got an email here from Lewis. Lewis says, "I have been reading some books from LaVey, but now I want to read some other writers, and I would like to hear some recommended books to continue my learning process." So I wrote back to Lewis, and I recommended the following to him. First of all, The Satanic Scriptures by Peter H. Gilmore. This is a great essay collection that I feel shows how Satanism still applies in the 21st century. A number of these essays are already available for free reading at churchofsatan.com. Look for the page of essays there from Church of Satan High Priest Peter H. Gilmore. And the book also includes a few rituals, including the official wedding and funeral rites of Satanism. Another book is We Are Satanists by Blanche Barton. Now, this book is enormous, but amazing. Now, Magister Barton's original Church of Satan book from 1990 is long out of print and costs quite a few dollars if you're lucky enough to find a copy on eBay or wherever. But I wouldn't bother because this new volume includes just about everything from that book, plus hundreds of more pages covering the whole history of the Church of Satan. Some answers from Satanists, about Satanism, including myself. I mentioned in the book at least 3 times, I'm proud to say. Some previously unpublished things from LaVey and early Church of Satan letters, and a lot more. So that's We Are Satanists by Blanche Barton. Yet another book I would recommend, Bearing the Devil's Mark by Magister Matt G. Paradise. You see, when I myself was first learning about Satanism, Magister Paradise's essays were a very valuable resource to me. And Bearing the Devil's Mark is a collection of many of his past essays, most of which had been published in his zine in the 1990s and 2000s, a zine called Not Like Most. And it was publications like Not Like Most and some others which inspired me personally to write Satanism essays of my own, not to mention gave me a good look at Satanism in action. That was the Not Like Most subtitle, Satanism in Action, a publication of Satanism in Action, it was called. In any case, great book, Bearing the Devil's Mark. I'm honored to be in the thanks list of this book. And finally, one other book I would recommend is Infernalia by Magister Michael Rose. So, like Magister Paradise's book, this book is a collection of essays that had been previously published in print zines and were compiled here together for the book. You can read 1 or 2 of these essays on churchofsatan.com as well. Go to the Great Minds section. I even read one of the book's essays in a Satansplain episode when I did the episode on Ayn Rand's objectivism versus Satanism. So, Magister Michael Rose's essay on satanic rituals in particular, I think, are really amazing from this book. I've had the pleasure of doing some group rituals led by Magister Rose himself in the past, and he really knows his stuff. So that book is Infernalia. Now, there's some other books, too, by other Church of Satan members. You can find an incomplete list on churchofsatan.com. I've even had a few of my own essays published in a couple of compilations you might find there. And beyond all of these, if you're looking for books, I would say there are titles which are not explicitly about Satanism, but a recommended list of books from LaVey himself, which reflect or shaped satanic philosophy, really. You can see the Church of Satan recommended book list on churchofsatan.com. This next email contains a satanic dote, so let us cue the satanic dote theme song.
Satanic anecdotes. Satanic dotes.
Antonia writes, loving the podcast makes me think, laugh, and nod furiously in equal measure. I've started actually doing the "but Bill" voice when paraphrasing idiots in work. My satanic dote offering is one that I feel a few Satanists need to hear. Firstly, I've become very selective over whom I consider a friend. I don't put energy in where I get very little back. A few years ago, I met a girl when I was in university. We reconnected after university and started seeing more of each other because I genuinely enjoyed my time with her. She was American and I British, so one time we had a great British-American bake-off. We did lots of cool stuff. Alongside being American, she and her husband were also Mormon. We spent a bit of time discussing religion. Hers fascinated me, and I believe she was genuinely interested in mine. It was lighthearted and respectful on both sides. One thing I remember she said was about drinking tea and coffee, so Mormons don't drink these, as it says in the Book of Mormon. They are bad for the body, which is sacred. She was drinking flavored tea at the time, and I queried why was that considered okay. She laughed, saying that particular tea did not exist when the Book of Mormon was written, so it was permissible. She accepted that this was a flawed bit of logic, but still indulged in her favorite peppermint tea. I refrained from pointing out the satanic element of this. So yes, that is my satanic dote. I love my Mormon friend dearly. I think a lot of, especially Twitter-based Satanists, should remember other people's beliefs, should be respected. Hail Satan, Antonia, active membership currently in the final draft stages. Well, thank you for the satanic dote, Antonia. Glad to hear your active membership application is being written too. And yeah, I personally don't have a beef with Mormons on the whole. I mean, obviously, I find their religion ridiculous, as I do with basically any other religion that isn't Satanism. I was not raised Mormon, and I didn't really know any Mormons growing up. There just weren't many in my area. I grew up in a very, very Catholic and Jewish neighborhood. About half of each, I think. Maybe a little more predominantly Jewish. But anyway, I have heard stories about some cult-like control going on in Utah with the Mormons, but I can't comment on that personally because I don't know. But I have worked with some Mormons over the years, and my experience has been overall positive with them. One kudos I will give to Mormons collectively, though, which I got to admit, is that usually you see Christians who claim that being an atheist is immoral and that atheists will point out correctly that Christians per capita actually commit more crimes than atheists. And that, for example, there are way more Christians in jail than atheists. So that kind of debunks the whole, argument about atheism and morality and stuff. But having said that, one statistical outlier from that category are the Mormons. It turns out that Mormons commit far less crime than their fellow Christian contemporaries. So, credit where credit is due. Of course, I could never be a Mormon myself because I enjoy cussing and coffee way too much. Speaking of different religions, I have an email from Sahib. Sahib writes, Bill, longtime fan of the podcast. As an insomniac, I use podcasts to sleep, and your voice is just the perfect amount of soothing for me to do that. I normally will listen to them once over, then sometimes shuffle your played episodes into my nightly mix. Apart from helping me sleep, and don't take that the wrong way, your content is always intriguing. I am not a Satanist, but I really admire the works of LaVey and the Church's philosophy. As a heavy metal enthusiast, my friends and I passed around the Satanic Bible in school. I rediscovered it during the pandemic and found I very much resonated with some of its ideals. The Satanic Statements number 4 and 5 are my favorite. As a quote-unquote nice guy that's been taken advantage of for my talents for so long, I've now learned to save my energy and channel it for the proper times. It took a lot of trial and error, but it's brought a lot of positive change in my life since rereading the book during the pandemic. And before I continue with Sahib's letter, I just want to interject something here. I have known people over the years who didn't end up identifying as Satanists, but at the same time did read LaVey's works, Gilmore's works, and found that they got something out of it personally. And, as a Satanist, I say that's fine. It's okay. You get something out of it, even if you don't end up considering yourself a Satanist. Continuing on with the letter. Out of curiosity, I am wondering your opinion on the religion I was born into, Sikhism. Of course, the belief in God is a sharp distinction between Satanists and Sikhs. I myself am an atheist when it comes down to it. However, like the church, Sikhism was founded out of disdain for the dominant religions of its time. The founder of the Sikhs, and before anybody corrects me, like Sikhs and Sikhs, S-I-K, S. That's how it's spelled. I've seen in the dictionary like both pronunciations are permissible, so don't give me any shit for that. Anyway, the founder of the Sikhs, Guru Nanak, noticed that people focused so much of their lives on religion and ritualism that they didn't even treat others properly. They continued living their lives, ripping people off, bathing in the Ganges to rid them of their sin, and then claiming to be holier than thou. Guru Nanak called bullshit on all of that. He said there was no need for constant rituals and turning oneself into the sadhu just to be closer to God. No need to build high mosques and structures to reach the heavens. God is within all of us, he argued, right here on the ground, under our feet, and within our bodies. So instead of focusing on God all day, just remember it's in you already. Pray to yourself, he said, because God is within your mind. Then go about your day and don't be an asshole because God is within everyone else as well. It's simple, and that original message was heeded by many at his time. Nowadays, unfortunately, the religion has been overinterpreted and has gone against all that true meaning. Sikhs today forgot what Nanak said and have since instituted numerous rituals that truly just don't make any sense, and it's that which has turned me off from Sikhism today. I haven't disavowed the religion completely because I truly just don't feel a need to. I also enjoy wearing the turban, which looks quite stylish in my opinion. Anyways, just wanted to reach out and give my encouragement, keep up the good work, and spreading the good word. It is unfortunate that Satanism has been given a bad name today, and that crazy Satanic temple doesn't help, but you are one of the few voices on the front line defending and normalizing Satanism, so don't give up. I won't be able to sleep if you do. So that is Sahib's email, and I replied to him. I'm going to read you my reply. Hello, Sahib. Glad you enjoy the show and that you've also gotten something out of the Satanic Bible. I wouldn't say I am normalizing Satanism so much as addressing misinformation and common questions and topics that come up when it comes to Satanism. I don't expect Satanism to ever be fully socially accepted or normalized. I think I said in a recent episode being against the grain and not part of the crowd is kind of the point. That's why it's called Satanism. In fact, that's the biggest part where the Satanic Temple misses the boat. They want to normalize Satanism, which doesn't work. And in fact, what they call Satanism is not Satanism at all. It's this postmodern social justice warrior philosophy that's just decorated in pentagrams. Regarding Sikhism, yeah, there are the obvious religious fundamentals of Sikhism, which I reject as a Satanist. The whole monotheism thing, for starters. I will say, though, that I dig some of the aesthetics I've seen. I'm fascinated by some of their practices, like the 5 Ks, which are the 5. So for those who don't know, in Sikhism, there are the 5 things they have to keep on their person. One is like a sword, one is a bracelet, and there's 3 other things. And a funny little side note, I knew a Sikh woman in college who said that, unlike maybe a lot of American fathers at the time, her father wouldn't have a problem with my long hair. And I'm also reminded of a meme that I saw, one of my favorite memes. It shows a Sikh wearing the turban, and the meme is captioned, "I am sick and tired of being mistaken for a Muslim. We are not the 9/11 people, we are the 7/11 people." I love that meme because it shows a distinction between Islam and Sikhism in a lighthearted way. And Sikhs, in my experience, have an actual sense of humor, which seems to be lost on most of the Muslim population, I have to say. But your example of Sikhism illustrates religions invariably change their focus and evolve into different practices from the original when centuries pass and, things get big, especially when things get wrapped up into politics and border disputes and that sort of thing. Now, as a Satanist, I hear that same accusation with the Church of Satan, but I reject that accusation. First of all, Satanism is not even a century old. Second of all, the Satanic Bible doesn't have the subjective interpretation that other religious texts are lent to. So unlike the Holy Bible, for example, the Satanic Bible was not a translation of a translation of a translation. It was not by multiple authors. It doesn't have a lot of ambiguous allegories. No, the Satanic Bible was written by one man in modern English with a modern printing press. We can compare a copy off the shelf today and see that it's no different from the first edition, aside from the dedication page and supplemental forwards. The author, Anton LaVey, lived for almost another 30 years to explain exactly what he did and didn't mean. We still have people alive who knew LaVey personally, and so on. Also, and probably most importantly, when people accuse the Church of Satan of having changed its beliefs since LaVey, I ask them what exactly is it that a Satanist is not allowed to believe or do today, which he or she could do back in 1995, or vice versa. And I never get an answer to that question. Anyway, thanks for your email, Sahib. One more thing I want to point out is when we were talking before about this Satanist who has a friend who has a Mormon, and Sahib comes from Sikhism family and isn't a Satanist, but he likes what this is about. I think a lot of it really has to do with the real intolerable people are not so much the fundamentalists, the ones who are really devout. There are some people who just are incapable of having an objective conversation about religion. Because I have talked to Christians and people of other religions who were particularly devout, but could still hold a conversation without, condemning me as a sinner or doing other such bullshit. And it's the same vice versa, I'm sure, with some Satanists who, can't bear to have any objective conversation on religion. Again, you're not obligated to, but something to think about. And with that, I think I'm just going to say goodbye. Have an indulgent solstice by whatever name you call it. Hail Satan, hail candy canes, and eggnog and expensive gifts. Bye-bye. You have been listening to Satansplain. If you have enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and subscribe where available. For more information on the show, visit Satansplain.com. And to learn more about Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode, copyright 2022, Magister Bill M.